disrespect is grounds for departure. Contrary to what a lot of us have been conditioned to believe, what we've been exposed to, what we've been taught, when we do not learn sooner rather than later how to assert ourselves, and something that I was always told when I was a young girl is if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. And even though I understood what was said to me, it didn't really resonate until I became older and I started to, establish myself, particularly in a professional aspect, realizing that there are instances where it's actually more important for me to advocate for myself, even if it means that I have to, separate myself from an opportunity or leave an environment. Those are instances that are more valuable and more beneficial to me in the long run than this immediate gratification of feeling like, oh, well, I stayed and I prove a point. What's super important is that we shift our perspectives from the micro level, which is just what's available in our immediate atmosphere, and we start taking things to the macro level, or rather assessing things at a macro level. And that means paying attention to the environment that we are associating ourselves with at large. If we realize that we are in an environment or we are amongst a group that is more dedicated to our downfall, that is more committed to disrespecting us and belittling us every chance that they get, we have to understand that that isn't an environment that we're going to be able to reach our fullest potential. So the moment that disrespect starts to present itself, you thinking that you're proving a point by enabling the disrespect, and instead believing that, okay, if I work harder, if I come up with, a new achievement, if I prove to these people that I'm adequate. Here's the thing about it. It's not that people don't see your worth. What they're doing is they're putting you to an emotional, mental, psychological, and relational test, a social test to see how far they could go. And what I mean by putting you to the test is a lot of people, to deflect from your achievements, to deflect from your potential, will test your boundaries. They will disrespect you. They will belittle you. This is also prevalent when people do this in a group setting, right? These are all things to take a jab at your self-esteem. And the longer that you stay, what you are communicating to them is, I'm enabling your bad behavior. And in my most recent TikTok live, I talked about this, and also the video that I recently posted, I included a clip from that live. And the video is titled the College to Cage Pipeline. But specifically in the TikTok, I mentioned that we have to stop believing that we can straddle the fence, because the reality of these situations is this. If we agree to be under someone else's act, right? So it all starts with us exercising our sense of autonomy, our choice, our free will. If we agree to be under someone else's act, where they are showing us that they are going to give us breadcrumbs, they are showing us that they are going to give us beneath what we're actually investing in, if they're showing us that they are constantly going to disrespect us and they have no qualms about disrespecting us, these are all red flags that need to be taken into consideration. But most importantly, we have to take accountability for the fact that as long as we choose to stay under this act, these people can continue doing whatever they want to do. Why? Whether it's unfair, whether it's, wrong, whether there's going to be consequences that you implement later on down the line. In the moment, as long as you are enabling that toxic, disrespectful behavior, they interpret that as, oh, okay, we can keep disrespecting them because they're not going to do anything about it. So I want people to understand this. Your biggest lick back, for lack of better words, in the grand scheme of things when it comes to your advancement, your empire, your well-being, is you learning when to leave toxic and disrespectful situations and relationships. And to further explain why this is important, I'm going to read from a couple of sections in this book. And one of the sections that I want to read from is the intentional invalidation section. And it states, the tactic is used when an envious individual aims to damage the target of envy's self-esteem and confidence by constantly invalidating them, their accomplishments, their achievements, and their positive qualities, while simultaneously disregarding their input and contributions. When using this tactic, the goal is to slowly break an individual's morale, optimism, and self-confidence down. If an envious individual can succeed in making their target of envy question themselves, or even worse, feel unworthy, unattractive, and unlovable due to invalidation, then they have succeeded in the envious attack and projection. And there's another section in the book titled The Reputation Ruiner that describes why it's important to not feed into this and instead exercise exclusivity and even departure. And the section that I want to read from states, the reputation ruiner aims to ruin their target of envy socially in order to have power over them or to have them at their mercy, desperately pleading for others to believe their side of the story. So as described in that excerpt, there is some relational opposition that we face that has less to do with us exhausting all of our energy into explaining ourselves or proving ourselves, as much as it's about them establishing a power dynamic where they have the upper hand and we submit to positions of inferiority. And I actually want to share a quick story time, or like an example of something that I went through. And it was through a professional lens specifically. And I remember like we were collaborating towards something, and then out of the blue, like things just switched up. And one of the things, or several things that were actually listed, I was like, well, when I review this doesn't necessarily feel right. So I was like, I actually am not going to agree to this. Instead, maybe we can, establish something different. And then we could try to proceed forward. And then in the midst of, some of that pushback, they were just like, oh, okay, well, you could just work around it. You could figure out ways to work around it. And at first I was willing to do that. And then as time went on, I was like, something doesn't feel right. And I actually felt compelled to take a step back and to do some reflecting. And one thing that was really important for me as someone who is a believer, even though this is prevalent, this notion in itself is prevalent no matter, who you are or, what you practice. But for me personally, faith is my foundation. So I felt compelled to step back, and I felt compelled to pray about the situation. And immediately when I prayed, literally 24 hours later, as I was getting ready for the day, I felt an unction to get up and to send out messages saying, yeah, we're going to go ahead and scrap this. We're not going to be proceeding forward. And I just did it. I was obedient to the unction. And as time went on, I actually started to receive revelation of why certain things were happening. And I was actually convicted. And I realized that a lot of the hardships and a lot of the challenges that I was facing was a byproduct of me putting this, opportunity or, these interactions, or what people were telling me to do, what these people in this environment were telling me to do, what they, told me that they thought of me, how they perceive me and all of that. I was putting that at the forefront. And I wasn't even putting God at the forefront in my life at that point, because that was consuming everything. And what's so interesting about it is that's why it felt like I wasn't really seeing returns on that investment, because, the anointing of the Lord was no longer in it. And I had to sit with that. And I had to embrace the fact that, oh, wow, God kind of had to humble me in that moment and show me that, no, I'm not going to let you keep pursuing something that's trying to be, at the forefront of your life. I require that. So there are certain situations, especially for believers, where you're going to be placed, or you're going to be faced, with that ultimatum. And as a byproduct of it, though, when I look back at it, I'm just like, wow, this is so intentional. That was super intentional. It's almost like God did a chess move in my life personally, because the nature of the work that I do now, where I coach people, or even the content that I put out, where I'm talking to you guys and I'm encouraging you guys how to, exercise, wellness, or implement wellness in your life, and not just in a mundane way, or I hate to say it like this, but in a performative way where it's all these external things, but internally, do you know how to exercise your autonomy? Do you know how to advocate for yourself? Spiritually, do you know even how to implement practices where you're keeping God at the forefront of your life and you're not allowing other things to take his position? Also, too, when it comes to talking about implementing boundaries and respecting yourself and things like that, how could I possibly teach people about that when behind closed doors or behind the scenes, I'm allowing people to run circles around me, or I'm allowing them to position me as a doormat, even if it is for a professional opportunity? If I'm getting up here and I'm talking about advocating for yourself and setting boundaries, how could I possibly be telling y'all something that I haven't walked through or that I haven't practiced myself? So from that experience, I learned how important it is, especially as far as what I'm doing. And I encourage you guys to do the same, especially when it comes to what I'm doing, where I'm, providing services, where I'm doing work that's all about wellness, that's all about advocacy, that's all about, setting boundaries, believing in yourself, because believing in yourself is also indicative of you advocating for yourself, of you not allowing people to disrespect you and disrespect your contributions by simply staying in those disrespectful environments, or allowing people who constantly disrespect you to take up space in your life. So with that being said, it's so important, especially as you mature, as you start to establish yourself professionally, you have to deprogram from this thought process or this belief that disrespect should be rewarded with you working harder. That is a lose-lose situation to you. You should implement boundaries, and you should hold yourself accountable to make sure that you are not enabling that disrespect by essentially rewarding it. So with that being said, to wrap this video up, disrespect is not rewarded with your presence. Disrespect is met with your departure. Hey babes, that's all that I have for this video. Of course, I want to hear you all's comments, perspectives, and opinions in the comment section below. I thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to speaking to you guys in the next one. Take care, babes.